So most of you probably don't know what I do for a living. I'm a jeweler. I work at Ware Jewelers in Alabama. We have 4 stores. Links and store locations are in the description. Check them out down there. If you go to a jewelry store and you need your ring resized, stones replaced, prongs retipped, or anything fixed, that's my job. I fix all kinds of jewelry in different scenarios. And most of the time, that's exactly what I'm doing. But every once in a while, you get someone that comes into the store that wants to do something really cool and out of the ordinary. So one day, a gentleman came into the store and he had a coin. And not just any coin, he got this coin on a trip to Jerusalem. It's a Nights Templar coin from the First Crusade. And from the looks of it, it looks like it was made of bronze. He wanted the coin set in a white gold bezel so he could wear it as a pendant on a chain. Now, I knew I probably wasn't gonna get very many more times to do something like this, so I decided to film the making of it. So, without further ado, here it is. So I had never made a bezel like this before, and I wasn't exactly sure which approach I was gonna take to making it, but I had a couple ideas. So I took a piece of my stock white gold, cut a piece of it off, and then put it in a roller machine so I could flatten it out so it was the right size for something that I could work with, because I was intending on taking this strip of metal and bending it into the circle, the vertical side of the bezel. Once I had it rolled out, and the process of rolling something out like that, it makes the metal much harder, and so I had to anneal it. Now, I used surgical gloves or cleaning gloves whenever I was handling the coin, because I didn't want any of the oils from my hands to be affecting the coin in any way. So I took the piece of gold, bent it around, realized I didn't have enough, so I had to roll out another piece and weld it together. Now, I welded this, I didn't solder it, I welded it so it would be one piece and it would act as one solid piece, so there was no solder lines that would affect the construction of the loop in the future. Now what I'm doing here is just taking a sanding disc and sanding down the inside of that circle so that it would be smooth and as if it was one piece from the original circle that I made. Then bending it around and making it into the circle that I needed. Now, whenever I was handling this coin, I was using cleaning gloves or surgical gloves so that I was not contaminating or unnecessarily dirtying up the coin with my hand and the oils and the compound or anything that was on my hand. I wasn't exposing this coin to anything unnecessary that I would have to clean off later because I wanted to keep it as authentic as possible. Now, the one thing that was difficult about this coin is that it wasn't perfectly round, so I couldn't just put the gold on a mandrel and make it perfectly round. I had to fit it form to the coin. And I wanted it to be fitted form because I didn't want it to be a circle with a bunch of gaps in it. I've seen that done before and I'm not really the biggest fan of that design. So once I got it close, I shaped up the band so it was close and welded it together. Now, there is a good tip with this. Once you are welding something together, if you just put it under a tad bit of tension, once you melt it, it forms together. Now, this was the point that I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And what I ended up doing, I actually was very happy with. But most of the time, when you are making a bezel like this, you make the outside, then you solder it to a plate, and then you put the coin in there and you can only see the front side of it. That's one way of doing a bezel. That's normally the way they do stones and things. But I wanted it to be exposed, and I wanted this to be I wanted the back to be exposed, and I wanted this to be as low profile as possible to complement the coin and not get in the way of the design. I didn't want it to be too clunky. I didn't want it to be very large. So what I ended up doing, and you can see a little bit in this video, it was very difficult for me to do this and film at the same time, is about the middle of that bezel, I ground down one edge of it so that one side was much thinner than the other. So it would fit in, but then it wouldn't be able to go further down, and it would be, I was basically making the back side of it as I was working with it. Now, all I'm doing here is just sanding the outside, and now, once I had it to the point where I could fit the coin in, all I needed to do now was cut out of that ground down part that I made, the thin part, some prongs. And that's what I'm doing right here. I'm just going through, as you can see, and cutting out some prongs. Now that side, I obviously didn't put the prong on the right side, and it was like 4 cuts. But anyway, so as I'm doing right here, I'm grinding down with a piece of sandpaper on a disc these sections in between the prongs. Now this is obviously very delicate work, because if you go too hard and you grind down too much, then you're going to have to either build it back up and it's going to be a mess, or start over. So that's just something you have to take your time at when you're making something like this. So as I was grinding down these edges, being very careful to, one, not cut too far into the prongs and making everything level, and getting it to as low as possible so that the prongs were sticking up high enough, there was enough material for the coin to sit in, but it wasn't too clunky. So as you can see, I finally fit the coin in there. It fits good, which is great. And now I was ready to do some finishing work on the bezel. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm just polishing it up, adding some rouge to the wheel. And the reason why I'm polishing it and finishing it now is that when you work with white gold, you need to do a process that is called rhodium. You have to make the gold white. If you're working with white gold that has not been rhodiumed or rhodium dipped, it will be a little yellow and it won't really look as sparkly white as it should. So I'm just going around and using different kinds of wheels to get the inside, because I wanted the entire piece to be polished so that I can solder on the bail at the top, because this is going on a necklace and I didn't want to drill any holes in it, and I was going to use and put on a bail at the top. So I needed it to be polished and finished before I do that. So this is the bail that I used. I'm just putting a little bit of solder on it. Again, this is zoomed in quite a lot because this bail is quite tiny and this jump ring is even smaller. And a tip that when you are using or soldering something very, very fine, a good tip, although I didn't use it in this particular instance, is to put solder on both sides. But this instance actually worked very well, and it was a very clean solder and I didn't melt anything, which is sometimes a danger when you're working with delicate things. You can mistakenly melt it. So this is what it looks like. This is the bail after I put it on. I've just got to put it in the pickle solution to get rid of any of the residue that's left over from the soldering process. After a few moments, you take it out and you can put it in the ultrasonic cleaner or wash it off. So I'm just buffing here off the spots that were soldered, because it's kind of a matte finish once you solder something, even after you clean it, so you need to polish it so it's a high polish. And now, after I clean it, you have to rhodium dip it. Now, the rhodium dip is just coating the metal or bringing out its good qualities. And I had to do that because I didn't want to put the coin in the rhodium solution, because I wasn't sure exactly what it was going to do to the coin, if it was going to have any reactions, because it's bronze, and I didn't want to contaminate it. And all I was going to be doing was bending the prongs down, and I didn't want to risk damaging the coin. So once it's rhodiumed, it's ready to go. And so I apologize a little bit for the fact that I didn't really get any good shots of me bending the prongs down. I only got a couple shots of it. But that's also delicate because you don't have a lot of material to work with, and I almost crushed one of the coin prongs right there. And it's something that you got to be careful with, because I didn't want to bend the outside, because it's basically a very thin band of gold and it's soft, so you have to be careful when you're setting it. And also, I didn't want to break the coin because I've never worked with bronze before, so I didn't know how delicate it was. And so it's always good to take your time and make sure that you're not over squeezing something and eventually going to be cracking the coin. So here's the finished product. I think it turned out great. This was an absolute joy for me to work on. I love doing different things like this, and I think it turned out great. And the customer was very happy, and that's always what you want to do when you're working on somebody's thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Go check out our store locations and check out our websites and everything that we sell. We sell a plethora of different kinds of jewelry, and it's fine jewelry, so if you need anything we can get it for you. So go check us out. Links are in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you next time.